Love finances, the other F word, and want to support the show? Become a patron by going to patreon.com/FTOFW. You'll get special features, a shout out on the air, and early releases. Or if you prefer, pick up some merchandise at financestheotherfword.com.
As fantastic a CFP as Mel O is, and as wonderful an attorney as I am, please do note that anything said in our show are our opinions alone and are not meant to be taken as financial or legal advice.
Welcome to Finances, the Other F Word, a Gen Xer podcast for musicians and music lovers, where we discuss money and music without all the pretentious bullshit. Here are your hosts, Zoe Terry, attorney at large, and Mel O, certified financial planner and author of Finances, the Other F Word. Listener discretion is advised.
Hey guys, welcome to Finances, the Other F Word. And today on the show, we have a semi-light episode where we're going to talk about the Muppets in specific. Which is boom, 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 which is basically a staple of the Gen Xer. It came out right about the first wave of the Gen X generation. And of course, now Disney owns it. And we've talked about that before.
1976, to be precise.
That was in my facts I was going to cover. But
shit. I'll be quiet then.
That's all right. No, it doesn't matter. But first, this is a little, it's not even a PSA. This is something that I wanted to talk about. A lot of you might be very familiar. First of all, the holiday seasons are coming up. And last year sucked out loud between quarantine and families and not being able to go out. And as everybody's trying to go back out and learn to be social again, there is a very good probability that some people will be faced with the option of getting a ride home or driving home under the influence. But I wanted to talk about this in a different context. So obviously, most of you have heard about the situation with Henry Ruggs III. And he was a former Raiders player who just today that we're recording this is a Sunday. This past Tuesday, he got in a horrific accident while driving under the influence where he took another person's life. And I wanted to explore this, but I wanted to explore this on the financial terms. And then we're going to talk about the Muppets and cleanse our palate a little bit. So Henry Ruggs was driving under the influence with a blood alcohol content of twice the legal limit. Ruggs had in the car his 22-year-old girlfriend, and they have a 3-year-old daughter together. Ruggs at 3:39 a.m. on Tuesday hit Tina O'Tintor, who was 23 years old and had her dog, who I believe was a golden retriever, in the car with her on a rural street around, for those of you who are familiar with Vegas streets, around Rainbow and Spring Valley. She was not at a stop sign. She was not at a light. She was driving in her lane. And his Corvette dashboard computer recorded him at 156 miles an hour before he started to decelerate.
Oh my goodness, no way. I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, 156 miles an hour. And I thought at first, I'm like, well, how did they know that? Was there like a tire skid mark, or did they measure it? No, his fucking onboard computer on the Corvette said 156 miles an hour going down a rural street before he started to decelerate. And at the time he made impact with Tina's car, he was still going 127 miles an hour.
No way.
Yeah. You didn't know that?
No, I know. I mean, I know a little bit about it, but I haven't really read up on it because we've been dealing with the Rona in this house. But
right.
Yeah.
So he hit her at 3:39 a.m. going 127 miles an hour in his Corvette with his girlfriend in the car. She was driving a RAV4 with her and her gas tank. He hit her with such impact that the gas tank ignited. And it has not been confirmed yet, but it is reported that people could hear her screaming for help as the car burned.
Oh, God.
Now, if they find smoke in her lungs, then we will know that at least in some way, shape, or form, she was alive and felt the burning of the car. I'm assuming her dog was killed on impact, because he would have hit the dashboard or the window, probably broke every bone in the dog's body. And he was, I'm assuming would have been passed away. She was 23 years old. It is, I haven't heard at this time if she has kids. And the reason why I want to talk about this is because I want to talk about the financial impact of something like this. Yes, it's a tragedy on all sides, absolutely, but specifically for Tina's family. But let's extrapolate this instance out, because what I want you guys to think about is, if you are presented with the chance or the option to drive home under the influence this holiday season, or to get a ride, I hope that you think about what I'm talking about right now and you make the correct choice. Now, it is important to note that the Raiders, as well as every NFL team that I'm familiar with, have a service that is offered to players and staff, that in the event that they are under the influence, they can call this number at any time, and they get to be picked up in a Mercedes and they get driven home.
Wow.
So, yeah. So Ruggs was with him and his girlfriend, and they were at a place down here in Vegas. I'm sure you guys have, I think they have other locations across the country. Topgolf closed at midnight. And then him and his girlfriend went to a friend's house and continued to drink. Now they're kind of throwing Topgolf under under the car right now, because of the simple fact that that's where he started drinking. But of course, we don't know how messed up he was, but we do know that there is an almost 4-hour gap in between there, where we went to a friend's house where they continued to drink. So let's look through this. So for Tina's family, okay, they've lost a family member, which is horrible, and they've lost a daughter and potentially a sister and everything like that. But let's look at how that can financially ripple through a family. Okay. First of all, they have to procure legal defense, or not legal defense, but they have to get an attorney team to start going after him, and potentially in a civil case to try to get some type of money, which we're going to touch on here in a second. But not only have they lost a child and all of the emotional and mental suffering that goes along with that, they've also lost the future earnings of that family member. And a lot of times when people look at buying life insurance, they're concerned about paying off their house in the event of the death of maybe the primary income earner. But what they don't realize is that you still have to maintain the fucking house after they're dead. And you still have to replace the income that the future earnings of that person would have brought in. Okay. So 9 times out of 10, being so young, she probably did not have life insurance, which means that if she did not have maybe a group policy through her employer plan, that she could have found herself, her family could find themselves in a position now where they can't pay for the funeral. Funerals are very expensive. And I'm sure that given the situations and the circumstances of Tina's death, that the family is going to want a big blowout memorial, and that can run you on a funeral $30,000 to $35,000. And this was by relatively recent numbers. There's a whole bunch of stuff that goes into it. We've covered it on this show, and you can go back and listen to it, and it could vary in your state. So the family is faced with the emotional loss of their daughter, the financial loss of future earnings, the potential of having to pay out the nose for a funeral service that they may or may not have money for. And they have the parents of that child, again, not only lost a daughter, but they have lost an additional family member to potentially care for the parents into their elderly years. And so we've talked a lot about long-term care on this show too. And a lot of times the care for the aging adults falls on the children. And now they have lost one child that could potentially have helped that. So those are some financial ramifications for Tina's family. Now, let's look at Ruggs' side. So he was released from the Raiders 17 hours after the crash. his blood alcohol content was 0.161, which is double the limit of the 0.08 driving over the limit here in the state of Nevada. And that was taken within 2 hours of the wreck as per law. So probation is not an option in Nevada for a conviction on a charge of a DUI causing death or causing substantial bodily injury. And both of those things carry a possible sentence of up between 2 to 20 years in a state prison. And if you add on the charge of reckless driving, that could add another 6 years. That's where they're coming with the number that he could potentially serve 46 years in jail. He was only in his second year of playing in the NFL, and he is 22. His girlfriend is 22, and their daughter is 3 years old. Bail was trying to be set by the prosecutors at $1 million, but instead Ruggs's attorney successfully argued that you cannot use bail as a way to punish the person. It's just designed to have them return to court. And so bail was set at $150,000. And of course, he promptly posted it and was out. He had to surrender his passport. He is confined to his home, and he has to return to court on November 10th. Now, by the time this episode airs, it will be past November 10th, so I don't know what the outcome of that is going to be. And his girlfriend has underwent surgery for arm surgery, and now he is facing a secondary DUI charge because of the bodily injury that has been caused to his girlfriend from the wreck. And I don't know I don't know her sustained injuries. All I know at this time is that she has underwent arm surgery. On top of this, he had a loaded gun in the car during the time of the crash while he was under the influence. So let's talk a little bit about the gun laws in Nevada. If you have a CCW, you cannot be under the influence of any legal or illegal substance or alcohol while you are concealed carrying if the gun is in your possession. That is, you can't do that. Plus, you would automatically lose your concealed carry permit. However, in the state of Nevada, we have open carry. However, the laws in Nevada state, even if it is not a concealed carry, you are not to be under influence of anything while you were carrying. So what it actually says is it says that if you are driving intoxicated and you're carrying or holding a gun, it is illegal for the person to have his or her actual physical possession of the firearm. And that is considered, in your car is considered physical possession of the firearm. If it's under your seat, if it's in your glove box, something of that. If the person has a blood alcohol content higher than 0.08, then that is considered illegal activity. If he has ingested, inhaled, applied, or otherwise used too much alcohol, controlled substance, or another substance to operate a gun responsibly. So a lot of times you'll drive down the street here and you'll smell weed everywhere because, of course, it's legal in the state of Nevada. That's still considered even though it's legal, it's still considered an under the influence thing that can make you impaired. And even if you are over the legal limit of under the legal limit of 0.08, you can still face criminal charges. So the Raiders let him go. So obviously, however much his contract was, which I don't know, I didn't research that because it was kind of a moot point, is now, of course, down the drain. He has only been playing for a little over a year, which means that he has not really amassed the money that an NFL player would amass. He had a house that is worth approximately $1.1 million within miles of where the accident happened. And so he's lost his livelihood clearly. Okay. Not only that, he's probably going to be going to jail. And on top of that, he now has to pay defense attorneys for his legal defense, which is going to be no doubt extremely costly. He is using the attorneys that have already defended another Raiders player who got in an accident in the McCarran Tunnel. And that's a whole nother thing. And he got off because he was not over the legal limit of driving. And now 9 times out of 10, he probably did not pay his house with cash. And if he did, good on him. But if he did not, that means that the livelihood that floats the house is not there anymore, which means that the house is going to be lost and or need to be sold. But let's assume that he did pay the house with cash. If he paid the house with cash, there's still fucking overhead to run a household that's going to have a house that's over $1 million in value. You got energy costs, and in the middle of summer, this fucking place gets over 100 degrees, and that's a lot of space to be cooling. In the event that either way, if they can't come up with the money to cover the overhead, which I'm going to take a wild guess and assume that they can't, that means that the girlfriend now, who may or may not have worked, I would assume she didn't work, but the girlfriend is now going to have to leave the house with their 3-year-old. Now, the 3-year-old has went from a life of living in privilege and luxury, and probably with private schooling ahead of her. And definitely, I think it would be safe to say that she's lost the private education and all of the spoils that they would be able to give to their child had he continued his NFL career. And again, criminally charged, and he's lost his status as an NFL player, which a lot of people covet. And so before you get behind the wheel this holiday season when you're drinking, if you think you can drive, think about all of the financial ramifications that could happen to you on a financial level. If you get a DUI, 9 times out of 10, your job will let you go immediately, which means that you no longer have a paycheck coming in while you have all of these legal expenses coming in all at the same time. If you are in possession of a firearm, like Ruggs was, then now you're facing different criminal charges, which again cost money to pay for the defense attorneys. Not to mention, if you do cause harm to somebody, or you do actually kill somebody, then the financial ramifications, if you have, and Zoe could speak to this if she chooses, of a passenger in your car, if he had killed his girlfriend, then what we could be looking at is we could be facing all of the financial fallout from her family as well, or any passenger that you have in your car. So if you don't think twice for any other reason driving under the influence this year, or anytime, please think of the potential financial ramifications. And unfortunately, Ruggs is a very severe example, but it is an example nonetheless that is high profile. And again, by the time this episode airs, he will have already been returned to court. So that's my little PSA. As depressing as it is, I'm going to switch now to a little bit of fact on the life of Jim Henson. Oh, Zoe.
I just wanted to point out quickly something that you mentioned right at the very start, which is when you were talking about the financial implications, that in terms of the legal representation for Tina and the passenger, that's not going to be an expense to either Tina or the passenger, because obviously, well, not obviously to everyone, but the attorneys handle those kind of claims on a contingency basis. So it's not initial outlay. It's not something that Tina and Tina's family, or that the passenger's family or the passenger is having to pay out for initially. That's not how it works in terms of attorneys in this kind of case.
What happens if they do a civil case? Do they have to pay for that?
No, it is a civil case.
Oh,
so
okay.
That's what I'm talking about. So
got it. Okay.
For the criminal case, then yes, he's going to have to pay, and is having to pay thousands and thousands of dollars for his legal defense. But for the civil case, again, that Tina's family and that his girlfriend is bringing, they don't physically pay their attorneys. Their attorneys act on a contingency basis and take their fee when they win the case. So that's not an outlay that the family or the girlfriend is having to pay when you're talking about all the financial implications to Tina's family. That's all I wanted to point out.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, because that's why it's good to have a lawyer as a co-host. So with the civil case and the girlfriend, the secondary felony, so he's all it said is that he's being charged with the secondary felony. That would be on the criminal side. But in order for his girlfriend to go after him, she would have to initiate a civil case against him, correct?
Yeah, and the criminal and the civil are completely different.
Right.
And
so the criminal is started by her. The civil case, if there was one, would be started by her.
And it already has. And I can tell you that, but I can't tell you how I know.
Oh, okay. Which is fucking crazy that that's her man. and she got in the car with them. Obviously, she was probably impaired too. And then he got in an accident, and she's going to sue him.
Well, but that's, you see, that's how people look at it. But don't forget, firstly, it's an insurance issue for a start. You know, I don't know what his policy of insurance was, but that's why people have insurance. She's it may well be taken into account when, for her, forget, I mean, Tina's family is a completely different issue, but he I presume had car insurance, right? So initially, I mean, that's a whole other episode in terms of, given the circumstances, and the definitely could be implications for him personally over and above his insurance because of the facts of the case. She's injured, and she's an innocent passenger. So you know, she wasn't driving the car. The fact that she was potentially drunk herself and knowingly got into a car with a drunk driver may have some implications further down the line, but ultimately she was an innocent passenger that was injured. And so she has medical bills, and she's been fairly seriously injured. Then she's entitled to bring a civil claim, and she is.
Wow. So that's interesting. I'm glad that, thank you for filling us in on that. And let's switch gears to the Muppets now, because this has been pretty fucking depressing. But we will.
It's time to play the music. It's time to light the lights. It's time to meet the Muppets on the Muppet Show tonight.
I thought it was to get things started. Is that the second verse?
It's the second verse, love. I looked it up just so you didn't fucking ask.
I believe you. Okay, so let me go with some very quick information on Jim Henson, and then I'm going to turn it over to Zoe so we can be nostalgic and get the taste of this whole situation out of our mouth. But there will be an episode coming where we will be covering that because this is going to play out, and it's going to be very nasty, I'm sure. So Jim Henson, originally named James Maury Henson, was born September 24th, 1936 in Mississippi. And he died May 16th, 1990 in New York. And he was born in Mississippi, but he really was raised in Hyattsville, Maryland, and a suburb of Washington, D.C. Leland, Mississippi was where he spent a lot of his time. And they now have a plaque up that says that Leland is the birthplace of Kermit the Frog. And it is a permanent Henson exhibit, which I think would be really cool to go to. The term the Muppets is one that he made up, coined between a meld of marionettes and puppets. And of course, he's created Kermit the Frog, Miss Piggy, Big Bird, Cookie Monster, and tons of other ones. He started a Muppet Show called Sam and Friends with his wife Jane, and we saw that Sesame Street, which eventually got canceled, but then with some other TV appearances morphed into Sesame Street, which began appearing on television in 1969 and is still going with the Muppets. The Muppet Show premiered, as Zoe has pointed out earlier, in 1976 and was produced in where, Zoe?
It was produced where?
In England.
The Muppet Show was?
Yes, that's what I just said. The Muppet Show was premiered in 1976 and was produced in where, Zoe?
England.
There you go. And
I'm sorry, I'm just getting attacked by a Bob.
That's okay. He's a good kitty. So they got an international audience. And of course, this led to multiple movies, the Muppet movie in 79, the Great Muppet Caper in 81, the Muppets Take Manhattan in 84. And he also coordinated or co-directed The Dark Crystal, which was very creepy and I did see in theaters. And he also directed The Witches in 1990 and Labyrinth in 1986, which we've talked about. We all love Sir David Bowie and his big giant woohoo, haha. And every time I watch Labyrinth, I'm just like, I don't know. I know she was 16, but I don't know. I know he's the Goblin King. Maybe wait a couple years and fucking marry that. In I would have, because it's Bowie. And so in 1981, there was a comic strip that was syndicated in a Muppet magazine. And then we see Fraggle Rock come online, which for those of you who were lucky enough.
Fraggle Rock. I loved Red.
In the States, you had to have HBO. to watch it.
Oh.
Oh yeah. It was like, I believe it was HBO because I didn't have access to it, but my friend did. And it was between 1983 to 87. And of course they had the little pom-poms, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then one of the shows that he did from 1984 to 1999 was Muppet Babies. It was a cartoon. That was my shit. That was my shit. Do you remember the theme song?
No.
Muppet Babies will make our dreams come true. Boo-doo-doo-doo. Muppet Babies. Okay, so for all of you guys who watched it, you're singing it with me. I don't know the rest of the song, but now that's stuck in your head forever. You're welcome. And of course, we've already covered on this show in the, I think it was episode number 40, Disney Monopoly, that the deal was finalized in 2004 and he transferred all trademarks and copyrights. Well, not him, but the deal was, he was already working on a deal with Disney to have Disney own the Muppets. And in 2004, all the trademarks and copyrights were traded to most of the iconic characters. But as we covered in the Disney Monopoly episode, not Sesame Street. And the puppets were sculpted mainly from foam rubber, plastic, and other, different fabrics, unless you have like a Snuffleupagus or Big Bird, which is a full-on person in a costume. And a lot of the Muppets take their hand puppets, but can take up to 2 to 3 people to puppeteer. And he also did some little experimental stuff. In 1965, he did a short called Timepiece that was actually nominated for an Academy Award. He also did a couple other releases that were un-Muppet related, The Wheels That Go, and Ripples, The Paperwork Explosion, and a whole bunch of other different stuff. So he was quite the Renaissance man, besides, of course, giving us, if you're a Gen Xer, some of the best childhood memories that we could ever have. And with that, I'm completely going to turn it over to Zoe.
Yay. Well, I said this to Mel yesterday. Doing the research for this show brought me so much joy. It made me smile. It made me laugh. I was down here with my eldest son and my husband doing the research, watching the hockey. My youngest son, poor baby, has COVID, so he's been sequestered into his bedroom since Thursday. We haven't seen him since Thursday. All we can do is bring him food and leave it outside the door, and I FaceTime him occasionally, and I can hear him coughing like a sea lion, poor thing. So the three of us were down here, enjoying ourselves while he's stuck upstairs. And yeah, I kept giggling and laughing, and my son was like, what were you laughing at? And I'm like, the Muppets. I forgot how much I fucking love them. It was our childhood, right? I mean, 76 to 81. I was born in 73. Now, according to my parents, I was scared of the Muppets when it first came on. I don't remember that. I think they're bullshitting. I don't remember being frightened of the Muppets. I just remember loving them. I remember watching it with my grandparents. I don't remember. Todd was saying that it was on a Saturday night in America. Is that right? Or Saturday evening?
It might be. I don't know. It was a long time ago.
Yeah, I don't remember either. But I want to say it was probably on a Saturday tea time in England too, because I used to watch it with my grandparents. And anyway, yes. And it's amazing how enduring it is. It started in 76. So what, that's 45 years ago, something like that. And but even now, it still goes on. Movies are still made. Everyone knows who Kermit the Frog is, and Kermit and Miss Piggy, and things are still. There's Muppets are still hot, man. And I remember. I moved to America 20 years ago next year. And right before I moved here, well, not right before, but not long before I moved here, my mobile phone was a pink Nokia. Do you remember the Nokia cell phones? And my ringtone was the Muppets theme tune. And that came to my head too. And then right before I moved here, I changed it to the Final Countdown, Europe's song. Anyway, that's just as my a side point. But anyway, so let's get to the actual Muppet Show. And what I was doing some research on was the fantastic musical guests that they had. I mean, they had some just amazing guests, full stop, but I was digging deep into the musical guests that they had. and also in terms of the non-musical guests that they would have, who would just, everyone threw themselves into it, didn't they? They just loved it. They really got into it. Non-musical people would sing. Like, apparently, I don't remember this, but Sylvester Stallone was on and sang a song. The Star Wars crew was on and sang songs. I mean, people just loved it and got really into it. But in terms of musicians, their first really big rock star that they had on was in their second season. So it ran from 76 to 81, and they had 5 seasons. First go round. They tried again to have another go at it. We'll talk about that later. So their first big rock star was in their second season, 1978, Elton John. And then he became a huge, big favorite on the Muppet Show, was on numerous times. But apparently he did just multiple fantastic songs when he was on, including Don't Go Breaking My Heart with Miss Piggy. And apparently she looks to camera and says something like, look at me, Kiki D, something like that. So she's just, you can just imagine it, even if you don't remember it, you can just imagine it. He did a fantastic version of Crocodile Rock. And then, do you remember the house band, the Muppets house band?
Yes.
They were called Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem.
Right.
Well, Dr. Teeth was actually, Elton John was the inspiration for Dr. Teeth.
Really?
So, yeah. So to have Elton John on playing with the house band was quite a coup, because he just embraced the Muppets. And apparently one of the funniest things was when Sam the Eagle, after Elton John had been on in all his fantastic costumes, said, why does he dress like a stolen car? Which is just, I mean, it was funny, it was cabaret, it was just, and the humor was also quite adult when you look back at it. It was something for everyone. So anyway, Elton John was one of the biggest stars that they had on in the early days, and that was in 78. Also in 78, you'll love this, Alice Cooper was on and did a Halloween episode. And it was called, he did Welcome to My Nightmare and School's Out. And in his episode, he was apparently an agent for the devil. And he was trying to convince everyone to sell their souls to become famous. And Gonzo and Miss Piggy were considering it. So you could just, Alice Cooper went on the Muppet Show and loved it. So, say no more there. So then in 79, Kenny Rogers was on there. And apparently, I don't remember. I don't really remember any of them, but you remember the concept. He did a version of The Gambler. Yeah. And apparently it was pretty kind of dark.
Yeah, I talked about it on one of our within our first 25 episodes, we did a duets episode, and we talked about investing, and I mentioned some of the duets on the Muppets, but it was very, very, superficial. And I remember that skit because he was in a train car and he dies. And then his soul comes back and then he's like kind of dancing. And as a little kid, even because it, like, literally the song gets really slow, because somewhere in the distance, the gambler, he broke even. And then you see the fucking soul of the Muppet raise up. And then it goes into you got and whatever. And I remember as a little kid, I'm like fucking freaking out. Like if you're watching it on YouTube, you just saw my face. That was my face as a little kid. If I saw it today, it would probably be the same face. It was like, I don't even know if it was scary or shocking or whatever, but yes.
Yeah.
Oh, it was I'm getting goosebumps. It creeped me out when I was little.
Yeah. That's kind of touted from all the research I did as well as like one of the most memorable, darkest Muppets episodes ever. So that was Kenny Rogers in 79. Then in 81, Debbie Harry was on, and the Muppets went punk, and she did Call Me and multiple. And that was the thing, they often did the musical guests did multiple songs, and like I said, they all really got into it. And I guess with Debbie Harry, it was a bunch of Kermit. It was Kermit the Frog's little nephew and a bunch of little frogs who all wanted to be punks, and so she was teaching them how to be punks. I mean, cute. Isn't that cute? Doesn't it make you want to go back and watch them all? It really does. Yeah. Another great guest was Diana Ross. Now, and she apparently sang Love Hangover to Fozzie Bear to try and, you know, increase his what am I trying to say, self-esteem. She was trying to increase his self-esteem, so she sang Love Hangover. And two of my favorites were the two grumpy hecklers in the balcony, who I couldn't remember their names, but apparently it was Statler and Waldorf.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I just didn't even know what.
I just followed the two angry men.
Yeah, and they were funny as fuck. Yeah, they were really funny. Anyway, apparently even Statler and Waldorf gave Diana Ross a thumbs up because they thought she was fantastic. So Diana Ross was on. Also in 1981, Paul Simon did a whole episode of singing all of his solo songs, including a duet with Gonzo and a duet with Miss Piggy singing Scarborough Fair, which I also need to go back and see.
I don't remember seeing that.
Also in 1981, and there was going back to Paul Simon. Apparently, all the characters from the veterinarian hospital sang 50 Ways to Leave Your Liver. just so friggin' cute and fantastic. Then Johnny Cash was on in 1981. And he also did a duet with Miss Piggy. I mean, just these people are legends, and they're all in there, you know.
They're singing to a Muppet,
singing with and to a Muppet, and changing the lyrics of their, you know, iconic songs for kids. And the parents were just as, you know, invested. Who else have we got? Liza Minnelli was on and sang. Hers was a whole murder mystery episode, and she sang multiple songs, including Copacabana, which, oh my goodness, it's just, yeah. Like I said, I need to watch the whole lot again. Now this one, you know, I'm a James Bond freak. I'm finally, hopefully going to go see the movie sometime this week once we're out of COVID quarantine. Shirley Bassey was on and sang Goldfinger, and Kermit, apparently the background to the story was that Kermit had borrowed $50 million in gold bars, and what he didn't realize was that a masked gang of pigs had planned a heist to steal them all. So it's just, I love it. And another James Bond reference was that Roger Moore was on an episode 2 and sang a song. So just fantastic. Then another image that is going to stick in your head. Remember Leo Sayer?
He was the one that had that.
You. Yeah.
That horrible album cover where he's like jumping in the air.
And he's got the afro.
Yes, big afro.
Jufro. He was on and he sang When I Need You. And he was sat singing up in a tree. And then as the camera panned out, you see that he's surrounded by bears.
I do remember that.
And they did all these different things to try and get him out of the tree, like blowing up things and getting a woodpecker and all these different things to get him out of the tree. And eventually they knock him off his perch. And you're all like, oh my God, they're going to eat him. And all they wanted to do was join in and sing the song with him.
I don't remember the end part, but I remember the camera panning out because as a little kid, I was like, oh my God, they're going to eat him.
And then other people like Gladys Knight was on. Steve Martin played dueling banjos and sang Rambling Man. Like I mentioned before, the cast of Star Wars were on just after The Empire Strikes Back was released. And they sang When You Wish Upon a Star. Mark Hamill, C-3PO and R2-D2 were on and sang a song. And the whole storyline there was that Chewbacca had been kidnapped by an evil figure called Darth Nader. And the profile actually looked a lot like Gonzo. So,
and the thing is how's that for foreshadowing? Everybody in that episode is now owned by Disney.
Yep. Like I said, the house band, they came up with the house band in 1975, and it was Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem, and Elton John was the inspiration for Dr. Teeth. Now get this, I wish I'd have known about this. That band actually did a live gig in 2016 at San Francisco at the Outside Lands Festival.
Oh, that would have been fucking sweet.
I would have paid so much good money to go and see that, wouldn't you?
Oh, of course.
So that's what I mean. 2016, the Muppets are still alive and strong and playing fucking live gigs, playing festivals, man. So they're just so enduring. Now, in 1990, in the 90s, I think you mentioned this briefly. I don't know if it was Disney or someone else tried to revamp the Muppets, and they did a show called Muppets Tonight, which aired on ABC. They only managed 10 episodes, and I didn't watch it. I wasn't here over here then, but apparently it was awful.
It wasn't.
It wasn't good, right? But in 1997, Prince was on it. I would pay money to see that. And he sang Starfish and Coffee. So, like I said, I'd watch just that, but apparently it wasn't good and didn't last long. They only aired 10 episodes. But like I said, even after that crappy revamp ended and the actual show itself ended in, what did I say, 1981? So years and years and years ago, the Muppets have continued on with movies like Mel said. In 2002, apparently the Jim Henson had wanted to get the Beatles or one of the Beatles on forever and ever and ever, and it didn't happen. But in 2002, it was the Golden Jubilee of our Queen, and Paul McCartney was finally together with Kermit. He sang Hey Jude at the piano at the finale of the concert that he did for the Queen. And behind him is Tom Jones with Kermit on his shoulder. And so finally the Muppets and one of the Beatles were reunited or united. Ozzy Osbourne was on, because the Muppets also put out albums. I mean, the Muppets don't rest, man. They're putting out albums, doing movies, going to festivals.
Work ethic is on point.
I know. Ozzy Osbourne sang Born to Be Wild with Miss Piggy on the Muppets Kermit Unpigged album in 1994. Oh my goodness. Now,
no doubt he was high while he was doing it.
Oh my God. Yeah. No doubt Miss Piggy was too, because she's a naughty one. She is.
Yeah. They probably both fucking had a couple lines before they went out and they were like, let's do this.
They probably made out as well, to be honest. And I'm sure Sharon would let that one go.
I think Sharon would be like, you know what? Okay, it's Miss Piggy. I get
Miss Piggy. Yeah. I mean, you got to let that one go. Now, the final thing I wanted to just talk about is, you mentioned the Muppet movies. One of the, I love the 2011, the Muppets movie. And also I wanted to mention, there's a New Zealand comedy duo called The Flight of the Conchords. And I was obsessed with them. Me and Todd were obsessed with them. They were very, very funny. We watched all of their shows on I think they were on HBO. But we also went to see them live when they came to Vegas in 2009. And they're two New Zealand comedians called Brett McKenzie and Jermaine Clement. And they really are very, very funny, really out there, but it's comedy skits and they do funny music, songs as well. And it's just, unless you watch them, you can't really describe them. But anyway, in the 2011 Muppets movie, they split up in 2009. Brett McKenzie, half of the Flight of the Conchords, wrote a few of the songs for the Muppets movie. And he actually won an Oscar for Man or a Muppet. He won an Oscar for the best original song, and that song is in my head.
You've talked about that song at least 3 times on the show, so she is not fucking playing.
I fucking get it. A Muppet or a Man, and that movie. I just love that movie. I love that song. I love the Flight of the Conchords. I love Brett and Jermaine. Anyway, so then for the next movie, what was it? I can't remember what the next movie after that was. I never actually got to see it, but Brett McKenzie wrote all of the songs for that movie. So I must see it at some point. But anyway, so what my point more than anything was how this show made with Muppets has been the staple of our childhood, and then has continued to evolve and still be relevant, and make us laugh and feel nostalgic and just be so kind of pure and funny, even, almost 50 years later. So I love the Muppets. It's a Muppet Show tonight, man. That's all I'm going to say.
Dun, dun, dun. Yes, no, I love it as well. And I'm glad we finally got to do this episode and be able to, share a little bit of nostalgia with you guys, especially after the pretty serious beginning of this show. It's going to be weird to be like, remember when we talked about the ramifications of a DUI on the Muppet Show episode we did? But that's just kind of how it happens. We like to give you a little bit of seriousness, but at the same time, we are Gen X, and it's fucking great.
Who was your favorite Muppet?
I mean, I was a girl growing up, so Miss Piggy, but I mean, sometimes when I watch the Muppet Show, I'm kind of like, okay, Miss Piggy's kind of a bitch. But at the time, she, would wear like a fur, thing. What the fuck those things are called? What I'm talking about?
Yeah, stole. Yeah. Is it?
Not like it's a fur. Anyway, you guys know what I'm talking. Or feathered boa.
Feathered boa. Yeah,
feathered boa, and she was always wearing like long pink gloves that I thought were just the height of sophistication at the time. But now I kind of look at it. I'm like, okay, Miss Piggy, Kermit is clearly not into you. I don't know, maybe go find somebody else, stop being a stalker and annoying. But no, it was Miss Piggy. And then of course I liked the Swedish Chef because, and Beaker. So Beaker. It was Beaker.
Oh, everyone loved Beaker. Yeah.
Beaker, the Swedish Chef, and Miss Piggy. How about you?
I loved Animal. He was just, I think that just summed me up as a child. And I think my dad would probably agree. I'll ask him, which Muppet personified me, Father? I think he would probably say Animal. But I loved Animal, and I loved the 2 old hecklers in the balcony, because they were just so funny.
Yeah.
And just so sarcastic. And that was what I grew up on, was sarcasm, obviously. And yeah, just the whole show. I just wish it would. I need to watch it again. I'm sure you can get DVDs. Oh, we don't do DVDs anymore, do we?
No, now you can watch it on Disney Plus, where it says Disney at the bottom watermark, ruining your childhood forever. As again, we covered on the Monopoly episode. So with that, anything else?
So you can watch, do they show you the whole, like back to 76?
I'm not sure, but I think so. Mm-hmm. I think it's the entire catalog on there.
That is something that I will be doing.
Yes.
Especially if we are, we all end up getting the Rona.
Right. Absolutely.
Okay.
Well,
thank you for that.
Gen X, we hope you enjoyed that little walk down memory lane. Be careful driving this holiday season, and follow us on our social medias. Why can't I ever
Why must you pluralize everything?
I don't know. Well, technically it is medias. So follow us on our social medias at Finance is the Other F Word. Follow Lily Lou Mittens on Instagram. And of course, Finance is the Other F Word, another F Word to love. You've heard this, you know where it is. So with that, we are out this bitch.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. For outtakes and photos from each episode, please check out financestheotherfword.com.